So what can you do to mix up your jig minnow game and your plastic minnow imitation game early in the springtime? That's a real easy way to fish. Well, one of the things I still do is I will throw a single tail grub. It's one of those things that was literally one of the first bass style baits I think that came out with the original power worms were the 5-inch grubs. You can use the same jig head for all three approaches, and I will use a Moon Eye 1/8 ounce jig head for all three presentations. And it's got a nice sharp hook on it, it's got a good keeper on it, it's got 2 big eyes on it, it's got a very sharp hook. It's been very effective, and it's got the pill-shaped head, so it comes through the water really nicely and will swim very easily. I use the lowest weight that I can get away with for the action, and again, the action in this case is I'm swimming it. So I'm throwing it up into the shallows and I'm swimming it back. I'll control the depth with the speed of the retrieve, but I want something that isn't going to plunge into the bottom or get hung up right away, so I go with the 1/8 ounce. And with the buoyancy of the 5-inch grub on it, this thing can be fished shallow, or you can let it sink down to 6 to 10 feet probably. So very effective weight for the shallow water season. I'm for the minnow style right away in the springtime, I'm going to go with the XPS 5-inch single tail grub, and I'll get it in the ghost shad colored. And that is going to be my minnow imitator that I'm going to throw up into the shallows and swim back all the way up to the spawn. All the way, well, there's cooler water temperatures and they're eating on minnows. You can just put this in front of them and they will bite it. So a lot of times when it's a wind-driven situation where the bait's pushed into a cove or pushed onto a point or something, wind-blown shoreline with rocks and riprap, this is a great choice. Now the bass are concentrating on the bluegill that were harassing their beds, and now the bluegill are bedding, and the bass will go after those bedding bluegills. And so I will get a 5-inch Yamamoto green pumpkin black flake 5-inch grub, and I will put that on this same VMC jig head. It's got the parakeet type colors on it. It's got an orange bottom, blue, greens in there. You match that up then with the green pumpkin single tail grub, and that looks like a small bluegill swimming through those bedding areas, and they will munch that sucker. So that's the second color and reasoning. The third, now when you switch to full moons in the springtime, of course, in the early summertime, now you're getting crayfish activity, and that'll happen early in the season as well. And what I'll do is I'll take that same green pumpkin Yamamoto 5-inch single tail grub, and I will dip the tail of that thing into the Spike It garlic orange, and now I've got the perfect shallow water crayfish imitator. This thing swimming over the rocky shallows when you hit those full moon periods and the crayfish have had a spawn or a molt and they're up in the shallows. You can catch fish in no feet of water, and I will typically get a whole bag of them colored up here ahead of time so that I'm ready to go when the crayfish game gets hot and heavy, especially around those full moon periods. So if you got a tournament or you're out fishing, check those full and new moons, and when those things happen, those fish will be in no feet of water lunching up on new crayfish that are emerging out, and take advantage of that cycle when it happens. So that's the third reason. And then the fourth reason, I will also get the Yamamoto grub, but this one I'm getting in the pumpkin with black and green flake colored. It's kind of a, let me get one out of here. This one I'm using when the mayfly hatches come out. So I get the 4-inch, and I've got that kind of orange, brown, green, black, yellowish color, a smaller in the profile and shape of those larvae that are coming out from the mayflies. And when they come off the bottom and emerge up, I'm trying to imitate those mayflies by swimming that grub high, and I use a 4-inch. And in that case, I'll even go to a lighter than the 1/8 ounce. I'll get away with absolutely as light as I can. So here's how I go about fishing it. I'm simply trying to cast this thing in and imitate a minnow on the minnow part of it. I'm trying to imitate a bluegill, I'm trying to imitate a crayfish, and I'm trying to imitate a mayfly. So I'm going to change the technique a little bit as I get in those different areas to try to mimic those particular things. But on the minnow bite, if you're using forward facing and you can see the fish and you can keep it in front of them just like you would fish a jighead minnow, I would fish the grub. If you can't see them and you're just blind casting, simply find some wind-blown areas where you can get a little bit of cover from the fish. You can get plenty of cast distance range with it. Cast it out and simply retrieve it in. If you can try down lower where you're doing a real slow retrieve and trying to keep it just above the bottom. If that doesn't work, then reel it a little faster through the mid-column. If that doesn't work, keep your rod tip high and keep it just under the surface. That 1/8 ounce jig is going to allow you to do those 3 different retrieves for that minnow imitation. The crayfish thing, you want to get up shallow and throw it into the rocky areas and crawl it back. But a lot of times I've found that they see that color, that green pumpkin orange contrast, and they just jump on it. If I'm fishing the mayflies, I'm actually wanting to keep that thing fairly high in the water column. I'm trying to fish in the top 6 inches of the water column. So I'll use a lighter jig, I'll scale back unless I need to use a little heavier one for the wind. But then I'll keep my rod tip high, and my whole mission is to never let that grub come out of that top 6 inches of the water column. And they'll just come up and annihilate that, and they'll hook themselves. And that's the thing about it with the spinning rod and the lighter line and the braided line to the fluoro leader. Literally, these fish are hooking themselves, so there's no big hook set required. Just simply lean back into them with the spinning rod and make sure your drag is set up appropriately, and then just fight that fish in standard spinning gear fashion back to the boat. But they'll literally hook themselves up on it because it's a moving bait that they're intercepting, and the second they grab on, typically they're hooked. So great way to get some fish in the boat. So there you have it. There's 4 different ways that you can use the 5 and 4 inch single tail grub through the early part of the bass fishing season. Always have that medium action rod sitting on the deck, geared up with that jig head on it, to go through those 4 different techniques. You're going to use one of them just about every trip out from now through July. Hope that tip was helpful. Please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time on the water.